This session is very much about the way that digital technology affects our work, and in particular, as I'm speaking, how it affects my work essentially. And I think it's not, for me, it's not just about the print at the end of the day. The whole digital revolution has very clearly changed the way that I think about my work and how I embark on that journey towards the final product. Because I am somebody who is very, very obsessional about the final product and the beauty of the print. And so sometimes you could say that I'm indecisive, you could say I'm schizophrenic, you could say that I'm maybe experimental with the way that I flit around between digital technology and analogue technology. And I guess that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. This is the first digital film I made. What became interesting for me with the advent of Canon 5D Mark II, actually, it's going to be quite a techie talk, I really apologise. But it's that suddenly it became possible to make the sort of videos that I'd always wanted to make. So I bought myself a shift lens and I was able to make movies that looked a little bit like my pictures, my still pictures that I shoot with a 5.4 camera, but actually they moved a little bit. And so I became very interested in the possibilities of this. Anyway, I won't bore you with all of this because it's literally like watching paint dry. So because there are times I think when I could have come to this talk, wearing a tweed suit and riding a penny farthing, because I am a little bit old-fashioned. With the way that I treat my work. And it was very interesting for me to put this talk together because it did actually make me think about how many decisions I've made backwards and forwards throughout the last 10, 15 years since the advent of digital technology has really become accessible. And I was reminded that this work I did in 1999, which was a commission I did in Holland, actually there was a show at the Rijksmuseum at the end, and Spectrum, the lab that I use in Brighton, it's quite a well-established lab. They'd just taken delivery of their first inkjet printer. It was actually using pigment inks. And it was a wide machine, it was about 60 inches wide. And I was encouraged very much to make that show as digital prints. So scanning the negative on a fairly old-fashioned scanning machine. And probably, the prints are still in the collection of the Rijksmuseum. I hadn't seen them for 15 years, so I'd probably die of embarrassment if I did, but because my Photoshop skills weren't very good at the time. But I said, the fact that I made a show of very large inkjet prints in 1999, I suppose I was always trying to experiment with these new technologies and then coming back somewhat and reappraising myself. Likewise, this work I did about the reconstruction of the Treasury project, which was shown in London in 2002. These were the first light jet prints that I made. Most of you don't understand this is where the negative scanned and it's a digital C-type print. The image is written onto traditional photographic paper using lasers. So that again, that was, I suppose, at the forefront of that technology as well. And then, when I had a show of this work, 26 different endings about the age of the London A to Z, this was a show completely of analogue prints made with an enlarger, and this was 8 years later. So you can see that I'm coming and going, not quite sure what I'm doing, but maybe, I have to say that maybe this technology, we mustn't go ahead of ourselves, it is just a tool. And I think it is just a way, I think what happens with me, my thought process is that I think about sort of the end product and what I want it to look like, and somehow or other I achieve that goal using whatever technology is available to me. I take risks and I'm not too frightened of things going wrong sometimes, because you can always come back again. This work, which is a new book that's just been published, work that I've made in Poland over the last 5 years. Started off as a project about how the country was changing visually since they joined the European Union. This is where I began. I got a little bit confused, I think, by trying to be an amateur economist, and actually started to think in a much more honest way, I think, about making a piece of work which was potentially more poetic and much more about my relationship with this place, but which became a bit of a love affair for me. And this work was shown for the first time during the Krakow Photo Festival, which was May this year, and I have some installation pictures here. And these were digital C-type prints made on a Chimera machine, which superseded the Lightjet machine. And how I achieved these prints possibly is an interesting story. The problem with this technology of going through Photoshop and going through scanning and so on is it's absolutely crucial that you are fairly competent with your tools. It's no good having all of this available to you if you can't use it very well. When I used to make traditional analog C-type prints with an enlarger, I didn't make them myself. A lab made them for me, and I had what might be considered a relationship with my printer, meaning that the printer that I used knew the sort of look that I wanted, and very, very rarely did I reject prints. Suddenly I'm in control. This is the great thing about working through the digital process, and I'm sure you all understand this in the audience. However, there is also a sense that because you're using a digital C-type processor, which is like a £125,000 machine, obviously I don't have one of those myself, so you are working closely with a lab. In this case, what I'm getting to, the scans were made in my own studio, and we did all the Photoshop work was done in my own studio, except for the studio as a bedroom. And I would take these, I'd be working on master files, I would take smaller versions of the master file to the lab, get some 10-12 prints made, take them home again, tweak, do my adjustments, get another set of 10 prints made, and that way I got through the whole process myself, with complete control, to the point where at the end, it was literally a matter of spectrum pressing the button to get the big prints that come out of the machine. And so, and it was a very, very efficient way of working. We produced a whole show of 50 prints in a matter of, I think, 3.5 weeks, which was really some going, and I was really delighted with the results. You can also see that I've mixed more schizophrenia, but I've mixed up black and white frames as well. So I'm treating each image as a separate object within itself. Because it's working in white frames and working in black frames, there's more decisions towards the final product. Within 2 months of that show opening, I had a second show in a small gallery called Atlas in London, which was a work-in-progress exhibition of some work I've been doing with a British poet called Daniel Cockerell. The project is called Destroying the Laboratory for the Sake of the Experiment. I'm not going to tell you what that means. I'm not going to really know what that means, but we could be here a long time if I tried. This is our logo. I'm a slightly larger figure in the car. And we had a show at Atlas, and because the whole project is about an experiment of a poet and a photographer working together in England, travelling together, experiencing the same things together, but in a way it's about the hierarchy of seeing, I suppose I might call it. But what does Dan think is interesting and important to write a poem about? What do I think is important to point my camera at? And how those things, if we all took pictures inside this room, we all come up with different pictures, and I think that's essentially what I was trying to get at. I've been to a trade show, and I've become aware of the new digital media that was available. And I became very interested in the potential of being able to make a show, not just using pigment prints and using an HP printer and using HP media and so on and so forth, but also the potential of what that meant to the final product. But we have to be careful with digital technology, that because it's there we can use it just for its own sake. So what we tried to do, was make a series of pieces, I suppose, that doesn't sound too pretentious, which actually used materials which were which it made sense that this body of work was sympathetic to the actual message of the work, I suppose. So we have a flag with our logo on, which is digitally printed. This is the upstairs part of the gallery. This is wallpaper that you see behind, which was again, printed on these very large sheets. We had some people come in, thank goodness, to help us hang it. We normally do the interiors of Costa Coffee. So they had to paper the entire wall. It goes all the way down the staircase, and the poem has been designed to look like a road map. The bottom left photograph is actually a very large digital C-type print, which was made about 2 years ago. The picture on the right side is a pigment print made in my own studio, using the 50-inch printer that I'm lucky enough to have. And I'm very, very careful that I try to match the two, so it's almost impossible to tell the difference between the two, which I think is a very interesting advance in technology. This is one of Dan's poems about searching for poems, searching for words, and there was an analogy between it, but also with me going out searching for pictures. I used to get very depressed about having to lie in bed in the morning. We'd always share a room in a Premier Inn, and he would just lie in bed watching daytime TV, writing his poems, and I'd have to go out at 5 o'clock in the morning and start working. I became very jealous of his method. He'd have a little bag with a pencil and a little book, and I'd have all this massive equipment. So we put this together like this about searching. So it's a bit of the size of a dual-lit toaster, and the two ends pull out and reveal these hidden pictures inside, digitally printed. HP make this wonderful stuff called recycled bond paper, and I printed virtually all the pictures that I was interested in on a very low tech, low setting on this paper. Each one took about less than 10 seconds to print. It's quite extraordinary because it's such a low resolution. And then I, as you can see, crushed them all up, and this was in the window. And above it, I flattened out the print and framed it in a conventional way. I suppose in a way to talk about the building of a project in the way that, rather like writing a novel, I suppose, you get halfway through and you throw it away, you screw it up and you throw it in the bin, and then you come back to things again later on. So this is what this was trying to do. Digital print again, this time with the poem etched onto the glass in front, but because the paper's high gloss, what happens is not only do you get the reflection of you get the shadow of the text on the glass on the print, you also get behind the surface of the print a reflection of the back of the text on the glass, if you see what I mean, so it works on 3 layers. This was a sort of brickwork of images, just very much dealing with this idea of work in progress, building something, so that you can see that it's hung like a brick wall, including scans from Dan's poetry books. You can see some half bricks on the left-hand side, which reoccur the other side of the door, so it sort of it built itself around the door. This is made of concrete. This is etched with acid into concrete, very, very heavy. It's a piece of work about Spaghetti Junction, a day we spent on Spaghetti Junction, and that opens to reveal 2 photographs inside. This is something about Stratford-upon-Avon, which is it's a piece of work about how difficult it is to be creative and live in Stratford-upon-Avon. That's what we felt like when we went there. It was a living museum. And the line "Shit upon Avon" comes from Dan's poem. And this is a print reverse mounted onto perspex, and the letters underneath have actually been literally physically laser cut out of the print, out of the thing itself. So you could take the S and the H and you could put them. You couldn't, because I wasn't allowing that way. Well, you could take them and put them back into the picture. This is on doormat, which I didn't print on my printer. Okay, and I'm just very, very, very quickly going to show you something quite bold and brave for me, I think. I'm going to show you some pictures I did this week. I'm living in Poland at the moment. for 6 months. It's an experiment again we're doing. My wife and the kids are there. We're home learning the children. My daughter is 12, coming on 15, and I have an 8-year-old son. And we're living this dream, which is fraught with problems as well. And I've started walking around with my Canon camera, and I've really enjoyed the act of just picking it out of my bag, taking a quick snap, putting it away again, and getting on with trying to understand how you teach a 12-year-old mathematics. So I'm just going to show you these. This is really not special or important or anything. It's just I'm going to whack through quickly these pictures, and just as a sort of a sketch of this sort of way, a very fresh and different way for me to work. And but literally, this is all this week. Chilling my books does none of this, hiding behind corners and reading books. This is Walk in the Mountains, and this is a Walk in the Mountains with a 12-year-old girl. Okay, that's all I've got.